So the world has changed. Everything's coming together. It's got all these different names. We'll call it the consumerization of IT. We've got the cloud as another trend. We've got all this complexity that we've built up over the years in IT. And increasingly people are saying, well, actually, we need to simplify. We need to cut stuff down. We need to have a stronger opinion. We need to be curating architecture so that we can help our customers. When we think about what we've seen in the software business over the last couple of years, it's been really amazing. Because software had always thrived on complexity, on more configuration, on making things more and more complicated so that everything could be custom, so that the user could do things in a million different ways. But the problem is, when you do that, they will do things in a million different ways, and that makes support much more expensive. It creates all of these challenges. As we're seeing this intersection point or this crossing point where, let's say, the cloud's coming in and we're thinking about consumer experiences and how to do things better. And it turns out the way to make things better is to make things simple and to have an opinion. A good example would be a programming environment called Ruby on Rails. Now, traditionally, if you used to say Java, all of your classes and libraries and all that stuff, it is amazingly complicated and ugly just to understand what something was named by one person, where it is in terms of the system. When David Hannemeyer Hansen from 37 Signals, who was a very opinionated guy himself, created Ruby on Rails, a framework for the Ruby programming language, he said, look, it's going to be standard how you name the classes and how they relate to events and resources in the system. So that he actually took stuff away from developers. Everybody else was like, give more stuff to developers, give more choices, give more options. It turned out that wasn't how flow happened, and web developers really, really liked this idea. They began to use Ruby on Rails, and very quickly that became probably the dominant programming environment for web applications. So I think, what can we learn from this, this opinion? Well, it's not just about software anymore. You've got to have an opinion across the entire architecture. Really, we're moving to opinionated infrastructure. And you know, we've got a pretty good person, pretty good example here, Steve Jobs from Apple, that brought us this amazing opinion on how you should build a system. There was going to be nothing extraneous in here, nothing that might screw it up. We weren't going to have any flash. We weren't going to allow any of the things that supposedly you needed on the web. And for developers at least, and increasingly for consumers, it was absolute catnip. And we have a different model here from Android. Android allows for all sorts of customness, but it's much more complicated under the covers. Then I have this thing here, which I think is kind of interesting because it's a Windows tablet running Windows 8, and it's a Samsung tablet. And it's kind of really fast and kind of really speedy. And this thing, I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of really beautiful. It's got all kinds of, we can go through a system, and then let's look at this news app. Oh, isn't it gorgeous? And then we can have Gangnam Style, you know, we've all been on that, doing the giddy up. Okay, anyway, and we'll go a little bit further, and suddenly you find yourself in a Windows shell, and it's like, what the hell am I doing in a Windows shell? Microsoft didn't have sufficient opinion in terms of this is the best way to do stuff. And I think from a user perspective, I've used this system a little bit, you actually do get confused. So fewer options can lead to more flow. And I know consumer society, capitalist society, it's supposed to be all about more options. Turns out fewer options can make you more productive. And the bottom line is that server manufacturers and systems manufacturers are beginning to tie into this. So we're going to have totally integrated system stacks and hopefully experiences for running apps that could be more like an iPhone and a lot more declarative. It's going to be a lot more sort of, you know, look, and not just declarative from the user perspective, but from the app server and from the storage and from the hardware perspective. The vendors that are going to win and the architectures that are going to win are going to be ones that are most tightly integrated. Because let's face it, if we're buying hardware, we're making an interesting decision at this day and age. Because if we're not using Amazon Web Services, if we're not saying, okay, I just basically need a stack, I'm going to run it up real quick, if we're going to make specific decisions, yeah, it's going to have to be a tightly integrated, well-designed system. We can't be in a world where when we buy it, we spend, you know, a couple of weeks just trying to configure it and get stuff ready. It needs to be ready out of the box. It's the out-of-the-box experience. And the servers that win and the ones that we want to choose are the ones that we can just buy and start running applications straight away. That's got to be the value proposition today. So opinionated infrastructure, that's what we should be choosing.